This episode of Planted is brought to you by Pax Labs.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara. I'm Sara, your host, and today's guest really needs no introduction. Joining me today is Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member of Jefferson Airplane and Hot Tuna, bassist extraordinaire Jack Casady. Jack,
why, thank you. What a great intro.
Well, it's so nice to have you on the show. It's a whole different thing having a conversation backstage and like sitting down and talking because, you know, the circus is going on. Everybody wants to talk to you, get a picture when we see you normally. So it's really nice to have a chance to sit down and just talk today.
In our calm environment.
Yes, the calm environment instead of the circus. So we've got a lot to talk about, but the first question is the question that I ask all of my guests. What was your first cannabis experience?
All right, and that is rather humorous. I joined Jefferson Airplane 2 months after its beginnings. I came out in October, middle of October 1965, and it had formed with Marty Bellin, Paul Kantner, Yorma Kalkinen, Signe Tolley Anderson, and Skip Spence in August of that same year. So I joined. I joined out Washington D.C. Junior high school at 13, 14. He was finishing out high school at 16, 17, 18. And we had a band together, a high school band together. And we played, Buddy Holly songs and Johnny Cash songs and stuff like that. And the songs of the late 50s, 1957, 58, 59. In any case, Yorma being a few years older than I, 3 years older, as he left at age 18 and went to Antioch College, we stayed friends. And I was playing both guitar and bass. Started playing bass at age 16. With the band that Yorma and I had, I was playing guitar and he was playing guitar. In any case, after a couple of conversations, after Yorma had moved from Antioch College out to Santa Clara University, finished out his college in 62, I believe. When he was joining this folk rock group called Jefferson Airplane, we had a few conversations, and at the end of it, he said, "Why don't you come out and play bass?" And he had never actually heard me play bass. I've been guitarist. In any case, I came out in October 1965, joined the band. Everything worked out pretty well. So as a new band, no money, only a couple of people have cars. Paul had a VW open back VW truck that hauled all the equipment around and whatnot, what little equipment we had. I think Yorma had a little Sunbeam for a while. In any case, I didn't have a car or anything, and get rides from various people in the band. As I didn't even have a place to stay. I stayed at different places until I was able to get my own. And my first experience with a joint, I was already 21 years old then, so I'd never smoked a joint. It wasn't a going thing in the late 50s. Alcohol was, of course, and you'd heard about the heavier drugs being used by jazz guys and all that kind of stuff on the East Coast. But and of course, everybody knew the songs, Champion Jack Dupree talking about reefer and things like that. But it wasn't my experience. It was kind of this distant land of imagination that encompassed music of the late 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, of course. And it kind of all associated with some of that kind of music that I dearly loved and listened to. But when I came out to California, then I ran into people that were smoking that reefer that was talked about, whether it was Minnie the Moocher or Champion Jack Dupree. So I can't remember I can't remember who gave it to me. Actually, I do remember who gave me the first couple. It's probably between uh, Paul Cantor or Yorma, or Ginger Jackson, who became my girlfriend later on, uh, and that group of people. But I remember and I didn't smoke either. I didn't smoke cigarettes, so I immediately coughed and fell on the floor and wheezed and all that, and felt that I don't feel anything, and then of course naturally all of a sudden I did feel something, and that kind of began my association with the product, so to speak. But the other side element to this story is I remember riding along in the streets of San Francisco, up and down the hills, and going into the corners, and driving with Paul Cantor, who drove rather, at the time, I thought a bit radically in this car, somewhat carefree, as it were, in this VW bus, open back bus. Um, and he was smoking a joint, of course, and while driving, of course, and he was attempting to pass it to me, and I still had very little experience with any of this, and he noticed that I had no idea how to accept a joint being passed by one hand, and actually the forefinger and thumb of that hand, while jumping over ruts and things in the car, bouncing along the road, and how to manage to do this with great aplomb and grace and coolness, of which I had none at the time. And I remember this, Paul's, what I thought at the time was enormously big, fat thumb holding part of the roach, burning, and managing to pass it to me. And he taught me that if we put our two thumbs together while riding along with this roach in between, you could pass it off in an effortless manner. And there you go. That was a big deal in the keep your coolness of the moment of a young man. And that was pretty much my first experience with the infamous marijuana joint.
I love it.
Come here, buddy. Come here. Yes.
Oh, is your pup there?
Yeah, I'm coming. Don't worry. This is important stuff I'm doing right now. Go ahead. And your question is?
I was actually just thinking, it's just funny when we're younger, and it's like there's this drive to be cool and to learn how to seem so effortless in what we do. Hey there.
This is Chester.
Hi, Chester.
Chester wants a treat. And we're going to give him a treat right now.
Of course he does. Oh, he's so cute. But what I was gonna say is just with how at that age it's like we try so hard to be cool, to be effortless in our coolness, and then feel like as we get older we're just like, oh, whatever.
Well, yeah, exactly. Of course. I mean, by today's standards, I was an old guy at 21, and I mean everybody at Jefferson Airplane, I was the youngest guy at age 21. And we think the acceleration of things, there was no way I would be doing something like that if I was in my teens. No
Right.
way at all back then. And, I'm coming out of the 50s. We're all born as children of the Second World War. So born in 1944, I was younger, most Grace and Paul and 1939, 1940. So, but as far as being an East Coaster, this was it was like dropping into another planet. I mean, the fact that it was illegal and reefer and all that goes with it, and the sort of casualness by which people flaunted that law with real consequences if you were picked up and booked in possession of a joint. That was a big deal. and it could lead to a big deal sentence. Now, we found, that it was drastically different acceptance levels, very little, California being about the only place, and not necessarily in Los Angeles, but a little more in San Francisco. In any case, the perception with the people at the time was that somehow they were in a bubble and they were immune from this, but of course they weren't.
Yeah.
So that was all part of the deal. But the consequences and the jail times that you could get for being in possession of 2 joints was a big deal.
Yeah, well, when I was talking to Yorma about it, he was mentioning too that he was in his 20s the first time he tried it too. And he said many of the same things. He's like, there were a lot of consequences if you got caught with it. It was something that was really new to him. He didn't try it until he came
Yeah, I
out to
mean, you were
California.
getting high and paranoid for a good reason. Because
Right.
your senses would be heightened. You'd hear a knock at the door. You don't know, because the smell would go every place, and you were liable to have a neighbor that would call the cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and then, it'd be thinking about like just the artistic community that was in San Francisco then. It's Yorma was saying that you got to know who it was comfortable to do that around and
absolutely.
not. Yeah.
Because it was a secretive thing. It's still, even though it was still a them against us kind of deal, it was still, you didn't go and offer somebody, if you had it, that you didn't know, unless they were in a really closed circle environment, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, you didn't. I mean, some people did. Some were very free. Some were practically walking down the street handing it out. But uh, with the agenda that we were in, pretty much, you didn't necessarily assume that was acceptable.
Yeah.
Even people you worked with in the artistic community.
I just remember like when I moved to San Francisco in the 90s, back in Michigan, you could still go to jail for resin in your pipe. It was still a really big deal.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
landed on the panhandle. So I was right, I was working in the hay, living on the panhandle,
yeah.
walking
But I
down the
mean,
street. You could smell it in the air. And I was like,
yeah,
what?
yeah. But if the authorities so chose, you could get arrested.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a law that making it legal then.
No.
So, uh, and then for whatever reasons, as the decades rolled on, of course, various elements of whether it was really legal or quasi legal, or whether it was the present local administration thought it was too much trouble to waste a lot of manpower on, or whatever. There's just too much going on. But what we perceived as our artistic community that grew, of course, later in the late 60s and early 70s, we saw that as a huge community within our circle in the San Francisco area. But of course, worldwide, it wasn't so huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
You lived in that town, and you functioned in that town. You could go down the coast into Carmel or Monterey or something like that, and be in a small community, or Salinas, and it was or Modesto, or inland in California. It was totally different.
It's so wild. It's so wild. Well, I mean, even now, like, people that I know who live outside of San Francisco, they don't go to the city. They always look at it as like, oh, San Francisco. Like I lived there for, 25 years before we came across the bay. And there's still a lot of feelings about anything goes in San Francisco. And I
I'm not. Yeah, I'm curious. I've been out of that. I left San Francisco in 1985. Went back to New York for about 5 years, and then I settled here in Los Angeles in 1989. And so I'm really, when I go into San Francisco now, I'm pretty much a tourist, and so mostly I really don't have any idea about the pulse of San Francisco any more, I think, than San Francisco. And we meant somebody that was 50 years older than us, as I am that older 50-year-old person right now. To those young people, I wouldn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah, it changes so quickly. I mean, even leaving San Francisco, what? Has it been 6 years now? It's changed so much when I go there. It's constantly evolving. The one thing I wish though is that there was more room for the artists again, because when I moved there, I went there for the arts. You could actually be an artist
That's
in
come and go. I mean, don't forget it was all based on gold and minerals and later on in agriculture. Uh, those were the forces that drove people out here across the United States. So it was never an artistic community. Those sort of come up in various places at various times, any more than the late 1890s. The Paris art scene was happening in the late 1800s. That wasn't repeated again. It was a special period of time, and I think San Francisco had some of that going on, and a lot of that going on in the 60s, and then the artists come, but sustaining that and through generation upon generation is somehow a bit of a different animal because it's no longer new.
right.
And those people that are trying to keep it intact are now old, and the newer generations that are coming into it, it's different when they walk into something that's already established, I think, than when it's establishing itself in its own amoeba-like way as a newer enclave and entity within a city. And so New York's had its periods of time, and Paris has had its periods of time, and in Germany in the early 30s and late 20s, early 30s, and there's been these great periods of artistic fervor for maybe a 10-year period before something happens and it goes off track.
Still smoking joints? Okay, we need to talk. If you love cannabis but you're still lighting it, let's look at what's actually happening. When you burn flower, you're creating smoke, and that smoke contains harmful compounds like tar, soot, benzene, and formaldehyde. In fact, almost 200 different compounds have been detected in joint smoke. So how do we know this? PAX decided to study it. In controlled lab testing, they compared joint smoke to vapor from their devices, using the same flower under the same conditions, and measured 16 key harmful compounds. The result is pretty striking. Vaporization reduced those compounds by more than 95%, because when you heat cannabis instead of burning it, you change what you inhale. You still get cannabinoids and flavor, just without all the extra stuff that comes from smoke. This isn't about judgment, it's about information. If you want to learn more, go to pax.com/science. PAX is setting higher standards so you can smoke less smoke. And for Planted listeners, get 20% off at pax.com with code PLANTED20. Yeah, I feel like in some ways I've had a lot of friends who actually moved from San Francisco to Berlin, and it seems like there's been some more interesting artistic things that are happening there now, but with a lot of the political change that they're having, I'm wondering how that's going to affect it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, that swing back and forth between when artists are tolerated and when they're hunted down has always been
Yeah, yeah.
throughout history of mankind. So I think that's the nature of the beast.
Absolutely. And actually, going on that, like the counterculture movements of your early career often challenge the status quo. Do you see any parallels between the fight for cannabis legalization and some of the cultural movements that you were part of earlier in your career?
Well, that was all part of it. I mean, but there are always a faction of people that want to legalize what we were smoking. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Right.
You know, but so I think they held hands with other political factions in Berkeley and looking for social justice and but it was tough for them to get taken seriously. Where basically you're saying you want to legalize getting high, you know. So I think that had a certain cross to bear of itself that made people think, you know, perhaps there's other things for them to put their energy into rather than legalizing smoking marijuana.
Right, right.
You
Yeah.
know, now of course, and as other elements floated to the surface of being used for ointments and pain relief and things like that, there was a certain legitimacy that is folded into that, shall we say. And I think that's why it's got some traction and really helped to get it a lot of traction in different places. But of course, don't forget the economy. That part of the economy that nobody talks about is the fact that people make a lot of money off of growing marijuana and selling it. And of course, that opens up a whole other can of worms into your who gets a piece of all of that, and does the government control it, and why shouldn't the government control it like it controls alcohol? Because Lord knows they chase down people who may had private little stills in their backyard making bathtub gin or whatever. Why? Because they couldn't put a sales government stamp on it and collect their taxes.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I remember when I first started in cannabis and people were making $3,500 a pound. And now, a farmer in the legal market is lucky if they make $4 an eighth. So that's why we have this illicit
But I
market.
mean, but you also have how many more people than when you started out doing it?
True, true.
Thousands of people reduce the price. Thousands of acres of weed, whether it's grown in your backyard or you get a plot of land or something. And then, of course, you have the people that don't want to take the time to grow that weed, and they steal yours, which is a big factor of all those people up in Humboldt County with the various cartel factions going up and violently taking what they want. So, you open up all these other avenues. That's quite fascinating with a good old, at the end of the day, a product for sale. After all, if nobody paid any money for it, we wouldn't be talking about all this.
No, that's true. That's true. I think now for myself, it's like we do like a lot of sharing and things like that, but your general member of the public still has to pay for their
Well,
cannabis.
yeah, exactly. And then you have a business model and you're selling a product.
Well, fortunately, I don't have to sell cannabis anymore. I would
But I mean,
never do
you
a plant
say,
touching.
and you say, fortunately, why?
Why? Because having a plant touching business is really, really hard. There's so many things that go into play.
Explain hard.
So the cost of entry is extraordinarily expensive.
That means a license to sell, a license to grow,
Licenses,
to grow.
testing, growing, the taxation. Every time cannabis changes hands in California, it's taxed, which
Somebody
is,
tested, yeah.
yeah.
And
And
and who put those laws in California into effect?
well, that's it,
Yes.
right?
Didn't you vote for those people?
Oh, and that's the biggest thing. It's really, and when people get mad about it, it really comes to that conversation, right? Who did you vote for? And
Yeah.
did
Well,
you,
in California, it's pretty safe to say that it's pretty much in the Democratic hands, and it's pretty much to say that the tax that you have on all those products of the stages you just described were California taxes.
oh yeah. Well, and when you look at it, it's a lot about the stigma, right? Because the people that we voted into office that are making these laws and creating this taxation, they have a really outdated view on who the average cannabis user is because it's not as much as people would like to think it's like more of a Cheech and Chong sort of thing, it's not. Because there's so many. Well, the one thing I noticed, because when I was still working in retail, when we got into legalization, it wasn't so much a high free-for-all. It was more people coming in saying, hey, I don't have to talk to my doctor about getting a recommendation, getting a weird look from them anymore. Can we talk about maybe using this for like sleep or stress or something
Right.
like that. And that's not to say people aren't getting high. They certainly are. But there's a wider swath of the public that's looking for either low euphoria or non-euphoric solutions, because there's also that thing of creating balance in our lives. It's like you can't be high all the time. You'll be
No, and
running
of
from
course,
things.
and as your user populations get older, of course, there's a lot of, let's face it, aches and pains.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the deal, and that's just part of the deal. And but it's interesting that those that run a government aren't going to see that as, let's heal the people with
Right.
products that prevent their pain. They're going to see it as a commodity.
Yep.
Anymore, the same way you get your property tax, the same way the water's taxed, the same way everything, your gasoline's taxed, the way any product that's out there, any way they can tax, they'll tax. And of course, that's the taxation has been the bane of populace since the beginning of time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and then there's also the structure around prohibition. Like, so my great uncle Art was a Secret Service agent. And one of the things that he said to me many years ago was, there will never be legalization of illicit substances because do you know how many people would be out of a job?
Well, I mean, there's so many ways, and that's put rather simplistic, but I understand what he means. But the real reason is that's how you can't, in your mind, you've separated cannabis out from the reality of it just being a commodity.
Right.
It's just a commodity. I don't care whether it could be marmalade or it could be cannabis. This cannabis happens to help with your joint aches and things when you put it into a different form, or you sit around and get high. But at the end of the day, it's just a commodity. It's very hard to get a separation of that commodity with a philosophical agenda.
No, it's
It's
true.
it's just not going to be seen that way.
No, the whole thing has
I'm
been a lesson of
I
ROI.
went down, I bought a new bicycle a few years ago. I got taxed for it. It helps me keep in shape, right? It helps
Right.
my heart. I'm out there. I did my 30 miles yesterday with Deborah, uh, and but how come, it's for my health? How come I'm not taxing? How come I can't write that off as a health benefit for me?
Well,
I mean, I'm told to keep in shape.
right.
I've built a gym downstairs. I got bikes that go out for rides. I keep heart healthy. I try to keep out so I'm not taxing the medical community with all my ailments and whatnot. Uh, and I'm doing all that. How come I don't get a break?
You should. You should. And I see. That's what I think. I think that if we are doing things to
Because
keep ourselves
you know,
healthy, maybe we can tell the government that it means that
it's
we'll all
like
be
this.
good workers.
I just put solar panels up here, and it took 2 years to get done with all the red tape in Los Angeles, which is the same deal that poor people that lost their homes are going to now with stages of bureaucracy. Each stage there's a fee.
Yeah.
There's a fee with every stage. There's a fee for the electrician to come out and check the new panels that I put in. There's a fee with a solar conversion process to feed back into the grid. There's a fee to come out and check it. There's a fee to check the actual work that's done out there. And this is beyond you buying the solar panels and the fee to get them installed, and then the fee to get inspected from the city of the solar panels themselves, one person from the city, of the electrical system that the solar panels feed into, a second person, of your electrical upgrade in order to accept electricity being fed back into the city. It took 2 years to finally get signed off on. That's another fee, and a separate person. That's 4 people have come out already, with a fifth person saying, The lines are too antique going back out to the street to feed electricity back into the grid. We have to replace those lines going out in the street and get it signed off again through 5 different fees totaling, a few $1,000s, just to put in what they said was, oh, we're going to give you a break. If you install solar panels, we're going to give you a break because you won't be taxing the grid here. Well, I don't know, what was it, 7 years ago when the grid was all messed up here, and there was a bunch of blackouts and brownouts during the 116-degree weather in the summertime, And that's when that's maybe 10 years now, that's when all this started, where if you get solar energy and you're able to help out with the energy problems in Los Angeles, because then we'll give you an incentive, a tax break to get all these things in. All that went away about 3-4 years ago after the pandemic, vanished. And so I put in all this stuff. Where's my tax break? No tax break. And when it was going to be like 15% or something, it went down to 7%, and now it's like 3.5% or something like that. So it's going to take, I'm going to be 81 years old in April. And I'm really pushing it to see if I can ever get any of this money in years. Right? And of course, they only last 10 years. You got to replace it all in 10 years.
So when you're looking at taxation in cannabis, they have 280E where you cannot claim a lot of the same claims that other businesses can do. And if you're late on all the different write-offs that more normal businesses can do, cannabis businesses can't do that, so they pay more in taxes. And for the state of California, if a business is late on their taxes, it's normally a 10% penalty. For cannabis, it's 50%. This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
Those are your people.
I know. Well, and you know what? And
your buddies up there, they're sitting with you smoking dope in there in the meantime while I write these laws.
No. Anyone who's smoking is not writing these laws. They can't be. But you know what it is?
Because it's about money.
It is, and it's about votes.
Money. It's not about philosophy. It's not about that it's a good thing for the world. It's about bureaucracy. It's what, how much can they expect there's so many thousands and thousands of programs that people try to get the government to pay for.
Right.
Yours isn't that important to them.
I know.
Because it's like old news or something, what it is? It's old news. It's not some new element of artificial intelligence or how we got cars running around everywhere with nobody's in the car.
Right. Although I won't go in those. Have you gone in one of those?
It's plenty spooky to pull up next to a stop sign, look over.
Yeah, it is.
See nobody there.
Yeah, I am not into that. I don't know that it's going to be a very long time before I set foot in one of those cars.
Yeah, I was asking Debbie the other day. We were out on the highway going to our bike ride yesterday, and so we had to get the 4 or 5 go down to Marina Del Rey, and that's where we start. Park there. I think it's the last and only free parking in Los Angeles. You don't have to pay for it. Dock 52, folks. In any case, park there, and then we go down to Palos Verdes and back, and that's a 30-mile loop. And I was saying, because we just seen a couple of cars, or 2 of them, actually 3, 2 side by side, people in the back seat, and 1 following along behind. And which was really weird, the 1 following along behind didn't have anybody. And so I was saying, I wonder how long it's going to be before they're out on the freeway doing 75 miles an hour.
No. God, that scares me. That scares me so much. God. How did you
Anyway, we digress. Go ahead, ask me something else.
I just love talking with you, you know?
Okay, all right.
You
I hope you can use something.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Um
So I use Jorma Kalkinen's salve,
I was going to ask you,
purchase
have you
brand
used it?
salve. I use it. I mean, we all have wrist problems. We all have joint problems, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Yeah, I'm a bass player. Luckily, I have no issues with the two fingers in the style that I play with two fingers.
Mhm.
Fine. But the thumb, that's really messed up. I've got no cartilage in between the joint, which is
Oh,
typical.
you sound like
I had
Jeff.
hands. Yeah, I had a hand surgeon looked at it. Now, if I was a thumb picker and playing guitar, I'd be in real trouble because that swifting of the joint is there's just bone on bone. And I had a hand surgeon here she's a violinist with the LA Symphony, as a matter of fact. So I figured what better person to look at it.
Yeah.
She looked at it and she said, there's basically nothing to do. She said, there are surgeries you can do. She said, they're almost never successful. I wouldn't recommend it. I said, that's good enough for me. And a couple of cortisone injections, which hurt more than the thing itself. You just sort of live with it. But with the cannabis oil and salve and that seems to have relieved some of the issues from time to time, not always consistently. I believe it's probably a combination of, just how you're reacting to your environment at the time, or whether it's cold outside or damp or rainy or whatever, but so I've that's my primary place that I've used it. A lot of other people have issues with their knees now. I'm lucky. I still got all my original joints. Everything's still there. I haven't done any modular engineering yet, but I'm all for it, But that's probably the only way I've used it. I stopped using marijuana pretty much 1972. And believe me, up until that time, it was always around me. I had little pouches and bags in my hippie outfits, and there's pictures of me out there,
Oh, I've
and
seen them.
Lord knows, and
I've seen some
it was
fringe there,
it was
Jack.
pretty. I dove into that world pretty heavily, but then at the end of the day, I had to make decisions uh, where I felt that the perception of enlightenment that I was getting was not balancing up to the objectives that I wanted to achieve, and so it became a barrier rather than an enhancer. Because just for me, my in my world, in wanting to play things with precision and having clear ideas and clear concepts and whatnot. There was a place that marijuana played in a period of time in my playing, but also I was never fooled by the fact that if you cut a track in one night, and Jeff will know this, who's listening, and you come back and under the influence, you come back in next day, it's not always what you thought it was. So there's it began to be pretty obvious, and then I got interested in some sports when I saw Art Shank along with Yorma in '72 Sapporo Olympics, and we all got a bunch of speed skates, went down to the local rink, Legs Rink in San Francisco on Market Street, and started doing some speed skating, and with that led to different coaches and talking to people about doing strength training. Let me back up a little bit here. I had rheumatic fever as a kid, at 3 and 7 years old, and so I was not allowed to do sports all through junior high and high school, and so with that. I sort of missed out on that. I got interested in that as something to do that wasn't music, a different discipline. And I really enjoyed it. And so to get into that, I started riding a bike, that I still do to this day, and lifting weights that I still do to this day, and speed skating, which I don't do anymore. But in any case, those disciplines, marijuana didn't really have a place into it. You don't want to be out on the ice and high on marijuana when your balance is affected, and so wasn't even a tough decision for me. I just, stopped doing it so I could do something else.
Yeah. Well,
And I never really got back. I mean, as far as things that I've done, alcohol stayed all the way with me up in a number of years to great detriment where I went full clean and sober in 1990, February 25th. Just had my 35th birthday a couple of days ago.
Congratulations.
And never looked back.
Well, and on that note, there are many artists that struggle with the intersection of creativity and substance use. What advice would you give musicians looking to build a career while prioritizing their health? Because being a musician is hard on the body.
Well, yeah, but everything is. I mean,
True.
there isn't anything. My younger brother, Michael Casady, worked equipment for us back in the hot tuna days in the 70s, whatnot. Found a career in the industry of laying electrical work, cable work in these great construction buildings, where he did 20 years of crawling through ducts and whatnot on his knees, and he has all these new body parts, a couple of knees, a shoulder, things like that, all kinds of stress on the body. It's really tough to give advice about, and you mean in reference to marijuana?
Or just creating the balance, because there's a lot of other substances on the road
Well,
too.
for
Pick your
me, the
favorite.
balance was not to do it at all.
Right.
I mean, there wasn't, there was certainly a period of time when I enjoyed and I got some creative input from smoking marijuana. No doubt about it. And at times it translated into something that was new and fresh for me. But that wasn't a very long period. At the end of the day, I would have to go back around, take that inspiration and put it into a solid edited form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was naturally free form stuff going on and whatnot, but I just found that I just decided that balance, when I was out of balance, meaning I wasn't getting the results that I wanted, not just wowed by the results that I got,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it still wasn't enough. So therefore, if that, like I say, becomes an impediment, then it's easy not to use it, I remember there was this great story. And we're all sitting around after some concert or something like this and visiting, like we did on the road all the time. There's a bunch of people that we don't know lying, around, and you're sitting around a hotel room doing all this stuff. And you're lying, and this guy lying on the floor. He's listening. We're listening to records or something. He's listening to something. Could be whatever it is. And he's lying on the floor and he's smoking a big doobie. He says, I know I could really play like this. He's like listening to the Cream or Eric Clapton or saying, I know I could do this, man. I know I could really do this, I could just see myself playing like that, And of course, we're looking down at this guy, and this guy is really believing this. and he forgets that, like, before I ever came out to California in 1965, I'd been playing professionally almost for 8 years. I'd had a number of music instructors. I sat down hours and hours. Jorma Kaukonen, who just released a new album called Reno Road, rather. his podcast is Roads and Roads, but Reno Road was the album. It was an album that I recorded on a Wallen's tape recorder in my basement, Washington, D.C., my parents' basement, where I lived, 4 months after Yorma started learning the fingerstyle approach to guitar. And there's 19 songs, and they just sound magnificent. But Yorma practiced 23 hours a day, and he was his own best taskmaster. It had to be right. He wouldn't slough over parts, wouldn't do things. It had to be right. And that's the basis that any musician should approach their musical life. In my opinion, the drugs and other nonsense have got nothing to do with that. You've got to put the work in and the time in. And music exists without drugs just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, there's with the artistic community, there's always been stuff going on, a variety of drugs, maybe in order to keep doing what you're doing. But certainly all of that was involved in our experiences with Jefferson Airplane and the early part of Hot Tuna, for sure. But I wouldn't preface any approach to any artwork with drugs being a topic before the actual topic.
Right. But like when you...
It's how I would see it, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a
when I first heard music when I was maybe 3.5, that I can remember, 3.5, 4 years old, that first bout with rheumatic fever, and I wasn't supposed to move around. I'd listen on Saturday afternoons to Burl Ives and folk music on this in Washington, D.C. on the Saturday, and listen to classical music on Sunday. And that was my gateway. Believe me, by the time I was 7, I was hooked on music like crazy. And I didn't need any drug to do that. I had to spend almost a year in a hospital with it. I'm from a medical family, so my father's a dentist and his brother was a doctor, and my mother's side are lawyers. In any case, he got me in 1953, a program for treating heart disease with penicillin. Penicillin had just been used and was used, I think it started towards the end of the Second World War, but definitely in the Korean War, in the 50s, 51, 53. And they just started to fold that use for preventing infection in battle wounds, field units. It was started to be used to treat heart disease. And there was 40 kids that got the penicillin, 40 kids that didn't. I was sent out to this children's hospital called what was it called? The Crushed Child Farm Children's Hospital. And with a whole bunch of little sick kids, And so, and luckily, I got the penicillin. Luckily, I'd had no permanent heart damage, although, like I said earlier, I was not allowed to participate in strenuous sports, until, later on, when I got out of high school. But music has always been my gateway to that world that people try to get into, maybe with drugs, But my conduit is just, close your eyes and use your imagination.
Yeah.
That's what I remember,
Well,
and which is, if I can go on a bit of a rant here, that's what I think some of that is from my older perception of being almost 81 years old. Was pointed out by one of my engineers a number of years ago. She said, Jack, 90% more than 90% of music now is released and looked at on YouTube. Most kids look at the music first. They see an image associated that is put up. So, we created art on images, I remember, the song Streets of Laredo, thinking about the cowboy all dressed in white linen, but it finally dawned onto me, oh, the cowboy's dead. He's one of them. And, we all crying away. And, my imagination when I listened to these guys playing in Chicago blues, and Alan Wolf and Little Walter and all the great jazz guys that I listened to, the New Orleans guys, when I listened to Jolly Roll Morton, and he'd be telling stories about turn of the century music and the New Orleans and all that, you create this great image in your mind, to go along with the music. And then that was all. That was about as high as I felt I could get.
Oh, yeah. I remember the first time that I saw live music, I think, and I was in elementary school, and I remember marveling at that feeling of euphoria that I had, like I was floating on air walking out of there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's for. It's been around for a long time. They've
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, but when you look at like musicians out in the road, and it's not, it's a, like, when Jeff and I will talk about it, he's told me stories of the road crazies, and just like being on the road for a long time, and it's not the healthiest place to be. You have to really work to strike the balance. What are
Well,
some?
boredom. I mean, you're traveling. Yorm and I just got off the road. 3 hours on stage. The rest is getting there. And that's just the way it is. He and I talk about that all the time. Mike, a lot of musicians don't approach it that way, but I really just think of myself in the genre of folk musicians, where you go to where people are. Different people in different locations are what keep you alert and active and alive, and within that 3 hours you have on stage to play.
Mm-hmm.
You can only get so much, I think. I mean, if you have to, great. You stay in one place and they come to you. But, there's an effort made by both. There's an effort made, particularly by people in our age group, but to come to the show. And there's an effort you make to come to that same show. So you both commit to come into this building and then to give to each other. The audience gives to us. You are could write out a set list in the afternoon, that's fine. Come that night, just looks over and we play what we got to play, in order to what we're feeling with those people that night. That to me is that glorious part. The part you're talking about, all the boredom in between, yeah, that can lead to a lot of nonsense. And if you let it lead to it, enough of it, then it can be very detrimental to your career. But so, yeah, it's always about trying to achieve the balance. And sometimes the balance, particularly for us in an older age group, is just making sure you have the energy to put out the best you can that night and do what you need after, which requires a couple more naps a day.
I love that. Yeah, that's it. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember Jeff telling me that when Boxat was on tour with Hot Tuna and he was younger, and he would talk about Yarma taking a nap before the show, and he's like, how can you do that? I'm like revved up for the show, and he's like, and now I get it.
Have you asked him lately?
Oh, he gets it now. He totally gets it now. You need to have that rest.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you finish your show, you go back up, you do what you got to do at the end of the show to pack everything up. You get back in the hotel, and then you got to drive 400 miles the next day, so you're up at 8.
Yeah.
So, figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think all the energy, like for myself, and of course, I haven't played as the shows that any of you have. Like have been a humble jazz musician who's played like shows locally, but I know for me, after, and it's been years since I've performed, but when I would be done with the show, it would take a long time for me to calm down and calm my body and mind, just because of all the energy in the room.
But also, you're young, and you were even younger then.
Oh,
So
yeah,
of course, all of that. And of course, when we were touring in the 60s and 70s, we were young, and we could do just fine on 4 hours sleep a night.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Yeah, I'm not there anymore. I need more than 4 hours.
No.
But you know, your bass playing has shaped generations of musicians. So many bassists refer to you and your work. A question I have for you is totally non-cannabis related, because we just get this time together. But how do you view your role as an educator, passing down knowledge to new artists? Because I know that you used to go to Fur Peace Ranch, where there, you know, Yorma and Vanessa had a really great education program where people would come. But how do you see yourself in that?
Well, I did that for about 22 years. I mean, if in-person teaching, you know, and Yorma has always taught he's had a passion for passing on what he knows from the day one of learning it, because that's how he got it too from Ian Buchanan. And so I think that's just part of definitely a big part of his philosophy, is passing things on, and maybe sparking the creativity in some other person. And I had taught, you know, like back in Washington, and when I was still, you know, 18, 19, 20, 21, you know, in a local music store, like a lot of guys did, you know, you were able to teach something. I don't think I really appreciated that how important it is to keep part of your to keep part of your life open to that. But with the opening up of in the 90s at the Fur Peace Ranch, and it ran for 25 years, you know, I'd make that trip out there, and I really sweated bullets about how I was going to approach this teaching, because playing bass, the whole idea of playing bass is playing with other people. So it's, you know, if you think of it as like team sports or an orchestra, you know, I'm trying to teach bassists how to look at a song and orchestrate it, whether your part is going to be more rhythmic or whether your part is going to be rhythmic and melodic, or how can you frame this whole piece of music with your bass. And so I have had to figure out a way to do that. And so I started recording all of our shows, and I recorded a bunch of separate stuff with Yorma where I just didn't want my students to just emulate what I was doing. I want them to teach them some avenues of approaches, and then have them play those compositions that Yorma had written or that we do together. And so I came across the idea of Yorma and I playing together, and then dropping out my bass part and leaving it open for another bassist to come in as if they'd be in a studio overdubbing a bass part. But the difference being to not approach it as a static form of a lick versus a chord change and change to another, and you repeat the lick and move on, to force them to think a little more about the phrasing of the vocal, the melody of the song, what Yorm is actually doing with his finger picking and that kind of a song. Naturally, there are other songs we did, particularly Electric Hot Tuna, where they were lick-based or a repetitive bass, lick-based or something like that. But the stuff that Yorm and I worked out, that I worked out with Yorm in what we call as Hot Tuna out, with me adding in a bass part to something that is really complete music altogether. It stands alone. He's playing the bass notes on his thumb. He's adding melody and rhythmic and partial chords with his other two fingers. So I started to record almost all of a lot of our performances, particularly out at Fur Pace Ranch, which we started there because I had a nice quiet setting. And then when Pro Tools came in, then I was able really to then later on just put the session up for the students and just pop my bass out, and we'd play along to that a track, and I break it all down and they get to play along. That's pretty much how I try to approach it to them, and then have them each play separately so the rest of the class can hear as they. And force it by rather rapidly, because I wanted to teach. I said, you as a bass player, you're going to have to think on your feet a lot. The old adage of head arrangements. Quick thinking comes into play. I said, you're going to be asked to sit in with some band or some guitarist or some songwriter, and they're going to throw a ton of songs at you right away, and you're going to want to really just flesh them down to the basics, and hear it as a song first, and try to teach them how to do that. And it was pretty successful. I've had a lot of comments back, positive comments, a few negative ones here or there. Sometimes I could be a little forceful in my approach to get them to think a certain, or to open up. They usually become more closed. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to get them to open up, say, hey, we got this weekend together. This is fun here. You can really try anything going on here. And then when they try something, then I put them to the task, okay, let's clean this up. Because you've got to reinforce the song at the same time. So, to reinforce here, put your melodic idea in here, but you got to land back in home base, right on the money. Yeah, stuff like that. So my approach was mostly trying to get them to be comfortable thinking on their feet, but creative at the same time, forward thinking. And it's kind of an elusive approach that way. I didn't want to be dogmatic about play it like Jack plays it,
Right.
And I, as a matter of fact, quite often I was there. I said, you're not me. You're not playing the songs. You're going to be in your own environment, and if you meet a songwriter, you want to hear what the song's about, and hear the phrasing, the melody, and all of this, and how are you going to fashion out a piece of music for that, So that was my challenge, and since the Fur Peace Ranch has now ceased, but there's still online teaching. I've done Zoom sessions, which are somewhat successful. There's a certain amount to be learned for sure. And in a certain way, sometimes, because it was in a group format with maybe up to 11 students all playing bass in one room, if you imagine, Yorma's worst nightmare. And then, in a Zoom session, you can, even if you have a group of people, you can go back and forth one-on-one, and so that's sort of developed, of course, along with so many other Zoom sessions during the beginning of the pandemic. And can you believe? And that's already 5 years ago.
I know. It seems like it was just yesterday, and sometimes it seems like it's
exactly. Exactly, precisely my perception too.
Yeah. Well, with such a rich career, what's What's exciting you now? Like, what are you hopeful about?
Oh, I was excited about the tour I just got off of. We just were on the East Coast. Uh, we did January, middle of February. Just got back from that, and it was Norm and I had a. He's the one who did all the harmonica work in the new Bob Dylan movie, and I had met him earlier, a couple of years ago, doing a session for me here at my studio, and but that part was really exciting to add some new dynamic and element to how to the acoustic sound. But we played and we just had a ball. Yeah, yes, touring is tough. Yes, it was wintertime. Everybody got sick, of course, because it's wintertime, and all of that. But at the same time, that's what we do. So I'm as excited, if not more so, and grateful, definitely more so than ever, to be able to still play pretty well and have the dynamic and friendship of Yorma and all the things we do together, and the other aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And I just got married at age 80, so
I was going
not
to
bad.
congratulate you on that.
And then to Deborah Evans, who's now Mrs. Casady, and in January, right when the fires broke out. Boy, what a
Wow.
So we went off. We shot up to Las Vegas from here on the 6th of January, the night the fires broke out. Going to get married on the 7th. We did that, and we're looking at the news the night of the 7th of our wedding. Just having some dinner up there, and we thought we better run back to L.A. So we packed back up. Chester was best man, of course, and that's for those that don't know, our Cavalier King Charles. Here was the ring bearer, and then we came back on the 8th, and when we came back on the 8th, we were driving to 210 from the 15 Pasadena. Altadena was right above that. We could barely see it in front of the car.
Wow.
We got through about 3:30 in the afternoon, got back, left everything packed in the car, packed up my RV in the driveway, pointed everything towards the driveway, and we stayed like that for about 10 days, but luckily we didn't have to evacuate.
I'm so glad.
There's some excitement for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, going back to the wedding. So, what did Chester wear?
Oh, Chester had a tux. He did have a tux, but he apparently, between the time the tux was ordered, it was a little snug for him. So he went with his regular triple, black and white and tan, and so he was just fine. He's wearing his tux every day.
He's such a cutie. I love him. Jack, it's always a treat to talk with you. Thank you for joining me today. And it's like,
oh, you bet.
We went to so
I don't know
many
what
different
I
places.
did for your promotion of cannabis.
Well, I think sometimes it's more about just having the conversations around, what happened at a certain time, and you have a sober life now, and I think it's really important to have the conversation that there's a balance, and sometimes it's not for everybody, and there's also what's leading you. Are you leading your creativity, or are you depending on something else to do that? There's just so much that goes into play. It's not a one size fits all thing. It's not a hooray, it's for everybody thing. And more than anything, it was just really wonderful just to talk to you and to get your thoughts.
I'll tell you, when I started playing out in public and like at age 13, by the time I was 15, the year that Yorma had left to go to college, I was working on all the bar scenes in Washington, D.C. There was a lot of different kinds of music I was playing. That's one aspect that's missing in life today in the cities is these small clubs that if you're a folk musician, there was a number of them. If you're jazz, there was a number of them, and then bluegrass, all kinds of stuff up in the D.C. area was just a gateway for all these kind of clubs, club work, and the thrill and excited, the music. I did just fine without anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So later on, you build up a perception, or you have a couple of good shots of some sort of alcohol, and you're playing, and the exuberance is all there, and you think this is really great, But then a couple of years later, you go and see one of your buddies that was really great when he was young and clean. You see him now depending on alcohol in order to play, and it's different,
Yeah.
So, and then it can quite often turn to great tragedy. So, I think to anybody that's they should use caution if they're using any kind of drug, and their perception is they need that in order to create or feel comfortable with the music. I'll tell you one thing, though. When I stopped drinking, and drinking was a really bad one for me, you know, uh, it took me, I mean, because I stopped at age, 46, the it took me maybe 5 years to get back into my skin.
Yeah.
To find Jack again, truthfully.
Yeah.
And I mean, personality-wise, the ability to talk and converse with other people about mundane matters or anything, about whether you put a shield up in front of your face, about whether you're protective or cautious or scared or all of those things that happen to you. I didn't really feel comfortable for about 5 years, but I was determined to do it. But slowly, I wasn't worried about what I was missing anymore.
Yeah.
I was in the present and looking forward, but being in the present. And that's what a lot of times drugs and alcohol will take your perception away of the present, and you're not really there. You put a buffer in between, and that can wreak havoc with the great creative process that everybody wishes they could find. The reality is every day is not creative, with drugs or without drugs. Some days are, but if you're able to approach your craft and work within it, sometimes those days that seem like you didn't learn anything come into play for that great creative jump the day following. But if you don't have that day beforehand where you planted the seed, you'll never get to the great moment where you think you have this great epiphany and creative jump,
Yeah.
So it is all about building blocks. So if the drugs and alcohol destroy those building blocks, then the house never gets built.
No, that's true, and that's something. When I had Cross on the show, a couple. Now it's been a couple of years since he's been gone now.
Yeah.
But he was saying that it took him about 10 years to feel comfortable with,
Just him.
Yeah.
And now it's interesting because when I first met David, he was David and Paul and David Freiberg and they were all part of a folk scene going up San Francisco and in Los Angeles. And when I first met the guy, that sort of was around, but it wasn't a cornerstone to everything he did. And of course, as we all know, as addiction takes its leaps and bounds later on in your physical system and mental outlook, then it becomes that you start depending on something you should never, ever depend on. Because it doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't do anything. It's just there. It's just a substance, whatever it is. That was another thing I was thinking too. One of the reasons but one of the very obvious reasons why I stopped smoking marijuana, rolling up a leaf, lighting it on fire, and then sucking in the smoke the burning carcinogens into my lungs, is the fact that when I got out on the bike and started trying to climb up a mountain, I couldn't do it, because there's smoke that I've been smoking. I don't care whether it's a cigarette or cannabis. And so it was really obvious. I want to do a better time. I want to do this bike route, 25-mile bike run. I want to do it better and stronger. I can't do it better and stronger if I'm smoking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real. I mean, I think that's
that's why a lot of singers you don't see smoking a lot.
No,
if they're serious about the singing.
Yeah.
You'll see that right away. I mean, duh, and
that's why I don't really smoke joints anymore, because I mean, it's not just the smoke from the cannabis, it's the paper. It's not good for the lungs. It's like,
well, not just the paper. I mean, cigars give you cancer too.
Totally.
It's just the leaf.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff you hear around and all of that, But at the end of the day, you're rolling something up, you're lighting it on fire, and then you're holding it in for as long as you can.
You're not supposed to do that, though. Really, it's a myth. It hits you when it hits you.
That was our world,
Totally. No, I did that too.
Making a contest of it, But any case,
Oh, thank you so much, Jack. For people who want to follow you on social media, or do you have, with your classes, are those available for the general public to be able to take part in?
Well, you have to be vetted. You have to be able to play a certain level.
Totally.
And so that's all vetted through Furpees Ranch and Vanessa Calkin and all that. That's all done through that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing you next time that you're in town.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.